Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings running back picks for week 2. There's not a lot of guys up on the high end that I really like this week. The one guy that I think I would consider would be Matt Forte, and that's mostly because I think he's going to see a lot of action in the passing game. On a PPR site like DraftKings, you definitely want to make sure you get guys who are going to be involved in the passing game, because for running backs, it's an easy way for them to get some points. They get a point for every reception and also the points for the yardage. So if I was going to use anybody at the high end, it would probably be Matt Forte. I do like a lot of guys in the middle range today. Two guys that are really interesting to me are Justin Forsett and Mark Ingram for very similar reasons. Both guys are big PPR guys, so they're going to get a lot of those catches for you. They're also both guys that are favored in this game and the primary running backs on their team. So they should see a lot of carries late in the game while their team is trying to run out the clock. With a guy like Forsett, I actually just saw some news this morning that he was held out of practice yesterday. So he's the one guy that I'm a little more concerned about at the moment. I don't think CJ Spiller is going to play, which means that Mark Ingram should be the primary guy over there. But just keep an eye on Forsett. I don't want to recommend him and then have him wind up being out later on in the week. I do really like his matchup against Oakland this week. I expect the Ravens to handle that Oakland team pretty well, and I do expect them to have a lead, which means that I do expect to see some running late in the game, whether that be Forte or Taliaferro if Forte is out. If Forsett is out. As of right now, it looks like Forsett is going to play, but he was held out of practice on Wednesday, so that is always concerning. Another guy who I really like today is Tevin Coleman. The running back for Atlanta put up a pretty good game in his first NFL start. He had 20 carries for 80 yards. If he's going to see that kind of volume, he's definitely going to be somebody that's in play. One of the reasons why I really like him is what we didn't see out of him in the first game is what we saw out of him a lot in college, and that was breaking a big run with his home run presence. I think the Giants have a pretty weak run defense, especially if Beason's still going to be out. Missing a guy like JPP really hurts them. He was one of their best run stoppers. So I do think that Tevin Coleman's going to find some room to run here. And even though he didn't break one last week, I expect to see him break a big run this week because that is part of what he does. At Indiana, he was a guy who was breaking big runs for long touchdowns all the time. He has elite speed. He can run guys over. He's pretty strong, pretty big back. He runs hard. So I definitely like him here. Another reason I really like him, his price is only $4,500, which I think is just a little bit too cheap for a guy who's going to see that much volume. And he's definitely somebody that I'm going to have in a lot of my rosters. Remember, Joseph Randle of Dallas averaged over 4 yards a carry against the Giants last week, and he only had about 12 or 15 carries. They stopped giving him the ball after a while because they did start passing, and they did have to pass late in that game to get back in it. I think that the game script here for Atlanta is, it's a high-scoring game. We got 51 over-under. Even though the Giants are favored, I do like Atlanta to win this game, so I'm expecting them to be running the clock out late and hopefully holding on to a victory with Tevin Coleman getting his first 100-yard game. Another guy who I really like on the low end, Darren Sproles at only $3,500 is an absolute steal to me. He's a PPR monster. He's the third down back for them, but this year they're also lining him up outside as a wide receiver and throwing him some passes. He had 7 catches for 76 yards in the first game. And at $3,500, that alone is more than enough to give him good value for you. If you put a guy like him in at $3,500, you can pay up at quarterback. You can pay up at tight end and go get a Gronk. You can pay up and get guys like an Antonio Brown this week rather easily without giving up too much upside. Now, again, Sproles is not a guy who's going to get you 2 touchdowns most likely unless he breaks a couple long ones. But with the PPR that he can add up and the couple carries that he does get, he's going to wind up giving you a good amount of yardage, a good amount of catches, and give you a really solid floor, especially in your cash games. At $3,500, I think this guy is just way too cheap to ignore. A couple other guys that I wanted to mention real quick. Amir Abdullah from the Detroit Lions, he looked absolutely electric in his first start. He didn't have a lot of carries in that game. I think he only wound up with about 7. But he is clearly the number 1 back over there in Detroit based on what I've seen, even after only 1 game. And I think that the splits are only going to get more in his favor as the season goes on. Detroit did not run a lot in that first game. I think he had 7 carries for Abdullah and 6 for Joyke Bell. Joyke was really ineffective in his carries. He doesn't look right. He still looks hurt. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've never thought of Joyke Bell as a big-time running back. He's a solid guy. He's a decent guy in short yardage, I guess. But Amir Abdullah is an electric kind of runner. He, too, is only 4,500. It's more of a GPP play for me than it is something I would use in cash because, again, you're not positive of what kind of volume he's going to see. But I do expect Detroit to be winning this game. I expect them to be running the clock out late. And I expect Abdullah to be the guy who they're sticking the ball in his gut and letting him go and pick up some yards. The last guy I want to mention is Dion Lewis from the New England Patriots. Lewis is only 3,400, and he's another one of those guys that's a PPR monster. Buffalo is very good against the run, so I don't think that they're going to be banging LeGarrette Blount up the middle time after time and expecting to get a lot of yardage out of it. We know the Patriots like to pass. We know that Lewis is a guy who can help them in the passing game as well as, help protect Tom Brady in the backfield. So I think he's still going to see a pretty big role this week, even with Blount coming back. He might not see as big a role or as many touches as he did last week, but at 3,400, you don't need to get a ton out of him in order to make value. If he can get you 4 or 5 catches for 50 yards and run for another 20 or 30, he's going to wind up with 12 to 15 DraftKings points and give you exactly what you need for a guy who you're only paying $3,400 for. Like I said, this week, I'm really more on some of the guys at the low end of the spectrum than I am some of the expensive options. But I do think some of these guys at the low end just create too much value and offer, too good of a floor for you to not consider them, especially in your cash games. In your GPPs, if you're looking to pay up for some guys, like I said, I do like a guy like Forte up at the top end. Also really a big fan of Forsett this week if he plays. Like I said, they kind of snuck up on me, this injury news. I didn't see anything about it before today, and I was actually just reading about it before I came on here. So just keep an eye on Forsett. If he is the starter and it does look like he's going to play, I definitely think he's an option that you should consider as well. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been our DraftKings running back picks for week 2. Good luck in all your games, and as always, stay classy, DFS.